Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video on the socialist, anti-colonial, human-made games that we need more of. And also, obviously, Neofood and Neofood 2 are these that I have created, but I just want to kind of focus a little bit on that. Also, I'm going to give some general updates on how things are going at Silver Spook Games, which is a socialist, anti-colonial, indigenous-run cooperative here with myself and Holly, just in case you don't know that. I'm trying to talk a little bit more about the political elements of things today because, well, as I said in the subtitle, everything is political. Whether we acknowledge it or whether it is acknowledged or not. And so we want to have better politics in things that we do as humans in general. And so that includes games, which is one thing that we create, that we work on, that we produce. As a subset of entertainment, of course, as a subset of all things that we do, say, create, etc. So it's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because when the human made is also, I think, important. Obviously there's a lot of talk about AI, Gen AI, and legitimate, real, and important backlash to that, which also has a political character to it, obviously. I just want to do a quick shout out to. Let me just see if I can find that really quick without getting lost. Okay, maybe I'll do it later. Because I was reading a blog post. I'll try to open it later. That was an interview with our friends American Johnson and Luna Oy, who are voice actors. They're content creators. They're left, they are overtly self-described as left-oriented political content creators, YouTube video makers, and they're being interviewed about their stances on generative AI. Of course, here at Silver Spook Games, we don't use it. Very much against it for a whole host of reasons. But they were pointing out that because generative AI has it itself isn't human, but it does have a whole the politics around it, because it, as a creation of humans, right, the algorithms, the systems, the hardware, right, these huge digital edifices, right, these are human creations, and the way they're used by humans certainly have political ramifications, right? Particularly, obviously, the content theft, obviously, the way they're constructed, the way that they are enriching, making trillionaires, right? Making the capitalists wealthier and wealthier. I think it was aptly put that Gen AI is a system that removes wealth, or it gives wealth access to labor, but it removes labor access to wealth, right? So it takes the people that produce and gives them less and less credit, revenue, money, and it gives the rich, who already have too much money, access to more and more labor for free to exploit, right? So it's really just accelerating already existing inequalities, and that has a political content to it, right? Now, like computers themselves and software have many positive impacts, right? But the way that these specific kinds, like what is being used, what Grok, what ChatGPT, what OpenAI, what it's doing, how it's being used, how they're managed, who owns them, these systems, have political content. So that's why human made, but and then beyond that, there's just the there's a whole host of other reasons why we want more human made art and human made things, in intellectual and creative in general. So that's why I put that there. And that, which is connected to the socialism, which is also connected to the colonialism and anti-colonial aspects of things, right? Because Gen AI is fundamentally a pro-capitalist, fundamentally pro-inequality system, as I already described, and so that already makes it political. Which is why I mean more human-made non-Gen AI games, right? So anyway, okay. So let me just see if I can. I'm gonna try to keep an eye on the chat, but let's see. If I can, but I'm gonna just kind of just go on my topic here. So but part of this is in response because it just released the game Neophyte 2. It is out on Steam. All the sales do help us at the Silver Spook, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, human creation as opposed to non-Gen AI Silver Spook cooperative. We're also COVID conscious. That's a whole other thing to talk about, but which I believe goes along with all of these. Because I've been thinking a lot about how to promote the game, and this is kind of like a little bit of like my personal devlog as a game developer for the last month or so, because we were just talking about this. Also, just one more quick. I'm going to do this quick shot because it is relevant. We were just doing a recent Silver Spook. We had a Silver Spook Games release party for Neophyte 2 for releasing to Steam. There it is, right there. If you want to, hear from a bunch of the really cool voice actors and really, really talented, amazing voice actors and other people that helped with Neophyte 2. Holly is the other. Holly is the other full-time Silver Spook member. Here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, who does more than just voice acting. Obviously, keeps many things managed, moderates his stream, amongst others. But we had a bunch of the Princess Karen Bisberg Zuckerbuck, or Princess Landlord, as we established. Kate Nix, who plays that character, showed up there. Hasn't been in any of these, so that's really great to have Kate on. And Sondra Ruth, who plays several characters, including Princess Sarah, the polymimetic gynoid, Nostromo's Scylla, who is also Nostromo's ex, also showed up, and so that was really great. And then there was actually, I haven't uploaded the second half of this release party, which is going to be coming soon. Once it just takes time to do all this stuff. So, so anyways, I had a good time with that. But we also were talking about a lot of the state of creative industries. Most of these people are millennial or older Gen Z, I think, but mostly millennial. And so anyways, and I also talked to American Johnson, was one of the people on the list, at least in the start there. Who is also, also has videos on a lot of these topics that we're talking about today. And we're talking about problems of visibility, discoverability. I'm coming back to the topic that I was bringing up, and promoting things, or just getting your art or your entertainment or your game or your YouTube video or your just your podcast, right? Getting it in front of people, getting it discovered. The difficulty within that, going along with that, there recently was the Steam Next Fest, in which there were 30% more games this time, and there was 3,000 something the last Steam Next Fest, Steam Next Fest, if you don't, for those people who don't play a lot of games, is a festival on Steam where new up and coming indie game devs can get their demo, so like a not complete version of the game, but like just a partial version of the game in front of it was supposed to be like several 100,000 people, right? So just as a way to expose people to new interesting games they might want to play. Unfortunately, the latest Steam Next Fest, some people are calling it the Slot Fest. Flooded with AI games and it sucks. Steam Next Fest is low effort demos. The users tell Valve. Steam's weird multiplayer games won out over generative AI slop. And like actually that concept of low effort, this has been the Gen AI problem that of just things that nobody has really invested any time at all into and didn't really care about, right? Low effort, low human effort content, low human effort products, a game, art, movie, TV, clip, just some kind of output, right? Post, book, but like for a decade, like shovelware. I remember there was like a Sterling, the Commander Sterling channel, had videos on this, over a decade ago, right? This is a recent one, but there's like the problem of Steam, like just one platform, right? Having lots and lots of these games that were coming out that were just like of low quality that people. I was listening to like other indie devs talk about this, right? Because over time, like in the teens, there was suddenly access to these new tools, which was great. People were talking about like there's going to be a renaissance, an explosion, a cornucopia of great new indie games and many more people making games because tools will make game making more accessible. Like in the late 90s, early teens, that's what all the buzz was about. Which is not bad. And I was talking to, our fellow game dev, Dave Gilbert, about being an indie dev in like 2005 and like running down the street talking about, hey, everybody buy my video game. It comes on a CD-ROM. Can you put my video game in your local New York deli? You want to do that? Nowadays, actually, people are unironically just like, hey, here's a little arcade on the street. You want to come into this little arcade and play some random indie games here? Like that's like arcades are sprouting up everywhere. I'm watching all these things happening. I'm like, wow. Even like around here, there's some of those types of things. Definitely like in like New York and like LA and other places, I'm seeing that. So in one sense, maybe things are gonna go back to in that analog retro, unironically new metal, new wave, noughties and 90s direction, or even 80s direction with arcades, right? Because arcades are really big. Back in the 70s and 80s, so cyberpunk was a science fiction writer going into these arcades and watching kids like just obsessed with Space Invaders and Galaga and like feeling like they wanted to reach through the screen. That was where cyberspace came from. William Gibson specifically, the cyberpunk genre was born from that. It was actually in this tied to video games and like a certain kind of video game culture that arose in that time. Anyway. So, but in the 80s and the 90s, like obviously Nintendo, Capcom, Electronic Arts, as it was known at its time, Lucas Arts games. There were companies had to put games out. It was not really something that individuals are commonly doing, like just one person. These they required a bit more. They required more skills and more technical and sophisticated programming and other skills because it was just like the computer hardware was not where it was in the teens and certainly not in the 2020s. There was wanted all these tools to make it easier and more accessible to people to produce games. For better or for worse, that was the state that it was in. But jumping back into the 20 teens, by the time we got to the 20 teens, suddenly there are all of these tools, Unity. There's like Flash games and HTML, and then there's several other systems and platforms. Like Adventure Game Studio is actually pretty old. I think it was like it was like 2000 it came out. By Chris Jones. It was that's the Adventure Game Studio is what I used to make Neofeud and Neofeud 2, this is a screenshot of that game. And so but Adventure Game Studio, you didn't need to know some programming, and it was a pretty niche genre. You need to know how to do JavaScript. It was easier than just like programming your own game from scratch, but but game modding, I come from game modding, so like Half-Life and Doom. And you can make your own mods for games, right? Unreal Engine. I worked in Unreal Engine. I made my own Deus Ex Total Conversion mod called Terminus Machina. That was Deus Ex was a 2000 game. But you still had to have there was still a lot of there were some barriers, or I know like barriers, gatekeeping, and accessibility can be kind of or not necessarily positive terms, or like lack of accessibility. But I think people are recognizing, right, that there are benefits to friction, right? And this is coming back to the human-made games. I'm discussing that topic in particular because it was kind of like mostly focusing on, right, a lot of the people that were working on tools, right, like the corporation, Unity Corporation, right? Unreal, which is created by a corporation, right? It's not created by, this is not like a little solo indie project. Maybe AGS is a little bit different, but and ultimately, the goals, whatever the politics and the desires of the individuals working at these game platform companies, right, like Unity, when they're developing these tools, I mean, the ultimate goal of the capitalist corporation is to maximize its profits, right? And so if the corporation decides, making tools, and you're making tools, and more people are playing indie games, and more people are making games, right? There's also just a couple other engines, RPG Maker, Game Maker. I think Undertale Deltarune, which is made by the Undertale creator Toby Fox, if I'm not mistaken, just released a new chapter in the last few days. Very popular game. I think that was made with RPG Maker, right? Or Game Maker. Anyway, but Unity, opened up. I've also worked in Unity. Full disclosure, I have worked with Unity before. When I was teaching STEM, science, tech, engineering, math, to underserved and at-risk youth, as part of in the ghettos of Hawaii, I used Unity at some points in that. When I was working at 3D games, teaching 3D game design to kids in STEM classes and video game dev classes. So as part of teaching STEM. But Unity allowed lots of more people to suddenly just throw together some kind of 3D game, 2D game, and there were a lot of videos. Remember in the mid-teens, Steam started getting flooded with lots and lots and lots of these games, and you could just get a game on Steam. At one point, you had to, in the noughties, you had to actually contact Steam employees, and you had to basically ask for your game to be considered, right? So once it's the barrier to entry was very much pretty high. You had to get considered, and they didn't consider all the games, right? And there were less total games out there also as well. It was pretty difficult to get on, later on, I think I forget when exactly, there's Steam Greenlight, where, okay, there's just so many games coming out now, so we need to have a system to help. So not every single Steam employee was going to look, or not every single game will be internally reviewed like a job application for your game. And then there would be basically an election type, or like a crowdsourced game review system to decide what games would go onto the platform. And so Neofeud had to go through Steam Greenlight, and it was just phased out right before the game got on. But Steam Greenlight, basically your game will be showed to thousands and thousands of Steam users, and they would vote, or you could drive traffic to your Steam page, right? And they would see images, trailer, some material about your game, and Steam users would vote whether that game deserved to be added. So like Reddit upvoting, people who use Reddit, or like likes and retweets on social media. Social media, like the evolution of social media itself, is also is part of this history, right? Of it's really the entire human system now that is inextricable from speaking of socialism, from the dialectical material, the dialectical process of creating these material tools, which are hardware and software, as immaterial. Sometimes I call it dialectical immaterialism, because a lot of these things are they're not necessarily as physical. Like, what exactly is Facebook? What is Twitter? What is ChatGPT? It's they exist in the non-space of the mind, in the lattices of light ranged in the non-space of the mind, one might say, in Neuromancer, and in cyberspace, right? But they have a real impact, right? And so, so the way in which humans use the likes, the retweets, have their dopaminergic, have their minds, kind of positive, for better or for worse, altered, right? By staring at the like count, right? Like, I've talked to fellow game devs. I've been staring at my Steam analytics counter, right? YouTube video creators, when like I've been staring at my YouTube view count for the last 5 hours and the last 2 days straight. So dialectical conditions, the material is not just like how the land that you put tools onto, and you are a farmer growing corn, and that changes, or growing wheat, right? And that life experience changes, and you yourself, and the material conditions of becoming an industrialized worker changes the internally your mindset and what is possible in your world, right? But it's also like being that which stares at screens and looks at likes, right? Just that which doom scrolls, right? You're dialectically being transformed by the scroll of the doom, right? You are that which doom scrolls. You are that which short form content consumes, right? You are the vertical 20-second dialectical subject now, which is part of. It's just part of reality, right? But I'm trying to bring that into the, because a lot of times these kind of Venn diagrams of discussion and discourse are often like separate, right? But like that's where, so I think it's important for people. The whole entire planet is staring at screens for most of the time, like maybe not every single person, but a whole ton of them. People are trying to escape the screens they're staring at, right? 8 billion people are dialectical screen starers, right? They're dialectically transformed by touchscreen. They're that which interacts with touchscreen, or I'm looking at it. It's like a 2 foot by 1 foot, larger, not touchscreen. So old school, But even when you go to the arcade, you're still staring at a screen. Even when you go to the local arcade, you're still staring at a screen. And then everybody is yelling at each other to go touch the grass that they're not touching. Not saying people are not touching grass, but like everyone is a dialectical anti-technologist projecting their technology addiction to other people. All 8 billion of them. So anyways, but that's the condition. That's part of the condition. But people are like, we have to work in the real world. Most people who say that, they're not working in the real world, or they're working in cybernetic. They're working at a cybernetically, digitally transformed hyper reality. That just is the reality, right? Or that's not that it is the reality, but that's like what the people are experiencing. And obviously people do work. It's all hybrid, because we go out in the world and we work in our spaces. We have to keep our sweet potatoes going, and we got to go deal with the macadamia nut trees, and we got to do a lot of other work in and around the ahupua'a of Moko Okeawe, in the illegally U.S. colonially occupied country of Hawaii, that is trying to enforce capitalism upon us, but we're trying to build socialism with Hawaiian characteristics. So, but so that's I'm a little bit being a little bit facetious there, just to agitate people a little bit. But but you get what I'm trying to say, which is that but it might, even our, back to the land workers, right? We're working it out. We're working it out. We're all in the land. We're working the soil. We're dialectically transforming our material conditions, right? We're all the peasantry of the 21st century, leading up to, revolutionary change, wherever we are, right? But then where were you posting about that? Where you posting about that in the phone, right? Where? So like, it's a little bit of a reality check, or let's say an immaterial hyper reality check, or like a surreality check, or a hybrid reality check. You're in a hybrid reality. You're not, we're not in 1970s Vietnam, or, early 20th century Russia, and we're not in, the Paris Commune or anyone else's commune, and if you're in a commune, you're in the commune, but you're also in a cyber commune. So, that's another complication of this, which is why I think, because games are a space that originated when humans, like, arguably books transformed humans themselves, right? Because most of the time people didn't spend a lot of their time books. I call books. The books are like, oh, those are like those dead tree bark, flattened pieces of bleached tree bark. They think those are like dumb screens, right? They're like screens that are just static. They never move. They don't know what you want to do next. They're screens that don't tell you who to vote for, like Eric Schmidt, CEO, a billionaire tech bro, ex-CEO of Google, once said, and it still says that we need to do. That's why he needs to stop China from getting AI first, so that trillionaires and Peter Thiel and Techno King Space Emperor wannabes can all decide and control every single human on Earth. Eric Schmidt basically said that we can't control humanity if Western white capitalist men, a minority of them, don't control all of the future of AI, and Chinese Communist Party does. Anyways, sorry, I got off on a little tangent there, but my point is that games themselves and books, television, movies, books, these are like methods of mass information, entertainment, art, propagation, right? But just like humans, and most creatures don't spend, like, think about it in terms of like, thermodynamics, right? Think of it in terms of like, anthropologically, or even like, like we just went to the zoo, like we studied animals at the zoo recently, or just think like animals just in general. Like most animals don't spend like 8 hours a day staring at little rectangles, right, with markings on them. That's a kind of unusual thing to do, just in general, right? Just in terms of like, the activities of a life form, right? It's kind of an unusual thing to do, right? Like, like monkeys do spend times with tools. They create things. Primates, some of them, like one of them was like throwing cookies, and one of them was like getting really upset and like biting a lot of, biting on the bits of plastic. Some of them were like grabbing each other's tails. The birds, they like to squawk. One of them really wants attention. Some of them don't really care, but they just like squawking and making a lot of racket. But animals forage, they hunt, they reproduce, they wander about, they make their nest, they make their home, they make their abode. Some of them collect things like squirrels, right? That's kind of like a Steam, 65,000 Steam game library, just having this rack full of stuff and being a YouTuber about, look at all the cool stuff I have and let me tell you about it. Not to throw shade, I'm saying, like, because if people don't do that, then video games like Neophyte might never sell. So thanks to all the content creators and curators out there. Thanks to all the weird squirrels out there in the cyber hyper reality, collecting all these rectangular, interactive electronic nuts. Thanks for collecting all those nuts. But you know what I'm saying? But like just sitting there and staring at like a piece of flattened tree bark, right? It's called a book. I don't know if kids might not know what these things are, but staring at a book and just like reading it. They put them in these things called libraries that the U.S. is destroying, and Gen AI is going to make eradicate it. So anyway, these, well, they would like to. They would like to trying to. So you stare at this staring at like little markings, and then hallucinating. It's like having a multi-hour, right, drug overdose, right? That's what reading is. It's just sitting there and just hallucinating all kind of made up, it's kind of like, it's a form of undiagnosed mental health disorder. No, but just think about it. Just think about it in that sense, right? Like most organisms don't do that. Humans do that. That transforms, and obviously you can share lots and lots of complex information by sitting there staring at these objects, right? Staring at a television screen, it's a different process, right? It doesn't evolve. It requires less imaginative and reconstructing concept ideas and piecing them together, through language. And language itself is its own complex topic, right? That having language and the way that you communicate, and humans are not the only, creatures that communicate. But to sit there and read a book, it does require a lot of mental activity, because you have to it's like lucid dreaming, right? In one sense, well, it's like dreaming, right? In a sense, you have to construct everything that you're looking at, because you don't have like a pink and a purple elephant. Like you don't have, right? The sky above the port was tuned to television. The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel. Like you have to take the color of television tuned to a dead channel. Like what does that even mean? You have to put all those words together, like construct. Your brain is like activating all these neurons, right? Taking color, the television. Okay, I know what that is. Television tuned to a dead channel. You have to go remember what that is. It's like a McFlurry Oreo blizzard. It's like black and white, snow everywhere. What does it look like, right? And then you got it. I'm talking about this is like reading Neuromancer, and so all that activity. My point is that all that activity, transforms how it can make you sedentary, which is not necessarily good. Right? Because I'm not saying it's bad to read, but I'm like sitting there and just reading or playing a video game or watching television for like 16 hours a day. It's like probably not the best thing for your health. But like that transforms like how you interact with the world, and like for in the sense of your physicality, it transforms like obviously your mental capacity, to imagine and think about various ideas, topics, your intellectual and creative inner life, it's probably for the better transformed. Like Stephen Hawking argued, like it's debatable whether intelligence is ultimately a positive, net positive for evolutionary adaptivity. Like maybe it's not increased. Maybe it doesn't increase the survival of a particular species. For that, it's debatable, but. But my point is that so books, television, and games are kind of on a spectrum of like transforming. I'm thinking about these in terms of like dialectical materialism. Boots Riley just put our movie I Love Boosters. We just saw it recently, which there's like it's very good in a sense. It has like a dialect, a little bit of a slight dovetail, but movies are related to games. They're both art, entertainment that are political. I want to do a quick shout out just because Boots is sad that it's not in theater. Boots Riley. So I did full disclosure. I did message Boots Riley about promoting Neophyte 2. So he didn't message me back. So I'm not saying I'm like we're friends, but Boots, get back to me. Do watch I Love Boosters though. It's a very good movie. It is a deeply, directly political film. It has Keke Palmer. It's got Lakeith Stanfield from Sorry to Bother You, which is another great black communist, definitely political movie. Or maybe an African communist in America. I'm not sure what Boots exactly identifies, but it also has Demi Moore, who was really great in The Substance, and a whole bunch of other things actually recently. I really like Songbird also with Demi Moore. It's a COVID conscious, really good meditation on trying to keep community safe and your own house safe while people are endangering people's lives with viruses. Yeah. So Sorry to Bother You is a movie that deals directly with socialism, worker organization, building a radical militant labor movement. It deals with obviously boosters, fashion, culture, a lot of intersections, a lot of diverse, aspects of human existence are like kind of coming together in this. But then it's also, it's definitely they literally talk about dialectical materialism. It's almost like it's almost like trying to make a communist podcast book club, really entertaining. It's also all women talking about. Holly pointed it out, which is different because sometimes it can be kind of like, oh my gosh, what kind of freaking chauvinistic sausage fest book club is this Marxist book club, But it's like women talk about dialectical materialism. There's also a podcast called Half the Sky coming out soon. Another side shout out. Follow Half the Sky podcast, which has not American Johnson, Luna Oy, Lenore, who voice acts in Neophyte 2, and Lenore, who is playing through Neophyte 2 right now. It's a podcast for communist women by communist women, and adjacent people, like non-binary people, and go check that out. Speaking of politics, why did I jump to that? Because I love boosters. It deals with, like, they talk about dialectical material. There's a I don't want to give too much away, but there's a device, right? Boots really loves magical realism, right? It's like kind of sci-fi inflected magical realist. I think he described it. I can't remember. He has a really good description of his work, but it's like sci-fi, fantasy-ish, but like speculative, like magical realism in like a Kafka sense. It's not sci-fi like Star Trek and The Matrix. It's not like, what if in the far future there were spacecraft, robots, right? It's more like, it's like reality, but then with these particular elements. There is like a teleportation like type things happening. But a lot of it is like allegorical and metaphorical. I actually like Neophyte. My games are actually pretty similar to Boots in many ways. Person of color, anti-capitalist, deals with, the main characters are in poverty. Neophyte is definitely, it centers the poor and homeless and downtrodden. Boosters are not rich also. Boots from Oakland. So I'm from the Oakland of Hawaii in one sense. The not nice side of the coconut trees. Boots is from the not nice side of the Golden Gate Bridge. Not the beautiful built up part where Mark Zuckerberg's beautiful palatial apartments and mansions are. So anyway, where's I going with that? But he talks about dialectical materialism, right? There's a ray that deconstructs. One of them is kind of funny because it's like the conditions of reality that brought about the existence of something, like how reality was transformed. So one of them is like it's kind of making it more entertaining, because if you just read dialect, if you read like Das Kapital, you're just reading like Lenin or Ho Chi Minh or Mao, it can be kind of like, it can get dry, right? Just like, right? Because some people coming back to that, right? Some people are that which can stare at like giant, right, 6,000 mile long walls of text, right? And just like, I just love hearing the word dialectical and reading like Hegel and just like old dead white guy names. I just love, Marx. I love like the transformational and the economics numbers from, like a British, ship in 1980, the 1860 something. I just love reading all this dried as fuck details. Anyways, I don't say there's something wrong with that, because you got to, sometimes you got to do some of that. But like, I Love Boosters is like more accessible, like it's more entertaining. But it is talking about dialectical materialism. Like, so like somebody gets shot by a ray. It's almost like a YouTube video essay, almost. It's like a really expensive YouTube video essay. You get shot by with better acting than a lot of. I think Black Liberation Media said Boots Riley should have just done like a YouTube video essay. Like that way he could have even said more. Which I will leave them. I will leave Jared Ball to discuss that with Boots Riley in the back channels. But like it deals with the transformation. So like somebody gets hit with a ray and suddenly they turn into their parents. Unfortunately, their parents are both naked on the screen, and they're doing it with each other in front of like everyone, like their friends and everyone's around, and they're watching. Oh my god, what the heck is happening right now? Right, but it's because that's like the transformation, and the historical processes that resulted in you is your daddy and your mommy, or your two mommies or your two daddies, or the person with uterus had something liquid went inside of them, and then over time, right, you were gestated, and then you bursted from your parents' torso plate. No, I'm sorry, you came out, and that's a xenomorph, right? No, but that's dialectical xenomorph alien creation, but like so but then it also deals with like how was this clothing made? Well, it deconstructs like the cotton. Where did that come from? Oh, well, there was a resource colony in the global south in Africa. There was paint. It was came from this other place. It was made in a factory. This is not the best part, but because it's not quite accurate to how factories in China are, unfortunately, but certainly not for the conditions now. But that's one of Boots' maybe slight blind spots, being the age that he is and the place that he is in the circle. He could have encountered some other circles, but also he's making movies for Americans. So, but anyway, but it's like this coat came like this. The clothing was put together in this factory, right? And so it's about like revealing all of the material in the world, like where the core products came from, the base materials, the cotton, the paints, where things were assembled inside of this factory, and like in that it kind of reveals like the history of like the transformations that things went through. And there's also like a contradiction accelerator, right? So like one of them is like, there's a contradiction between the workers, the working class that are working for, that are trying to sell, right? The customer service people are trying to sell the clothing of this, rich lady's fashion company, right? And Rich Lady, played by Demi Moore, who is nasty and kind of the central antagonist. And so the contradictions between them, right? The class contradictions. When they get shot, there's a part where they get shot by a ray and it gets heightened, or it increases the contradictions, and then suddenly there's a big general strike, or like a huge like, I'm not sure how big the strike is, but it's a massive strike across the whole country. It involves like multiple. It actually involves like multiple countries, right? Just giant strike that then transforms. It talks about like synthesis, thesis, and synthesis that result in the thesis and antithesis that result in the synthesis. Like, so it goes through all that like really dry, Marxist, really dry like Marxist theory, and then like makes it more easily understandable in like an hour and a half long, it's like a $20 million production value movie. Anyway, so I mean, I guess like that. That's I Love Boosters is another like all the Boots movies, I would say, and shows like I'm a Virgo are like examples of like their political art. It's not a video game, but it's like political art, non-interactive. That is like not. It is like, I mean, now whether you think it's positive or negative, I mean, it depends, I guess, on your politics. I mean, if you're a right-wing reactionary racist and you want to be Elon Musk and you think you're a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, billionaire, or trillionaire, maybe you won't like it, right? And but in a sense of like it has a politics. It's not necessarily saying what it is, but it's unabashedly has a particular message, I would say. Sorry to bother you, definitely does. And it's not pretending like it doesn't, which is I think that's actually kind of important, especially now because most people, even in the West, in the U.S., capitalism has a less than 50% approval rating, and socialism is growing all the time. I mean, that's part of why Zoran Mamdani became mayor, right? So, like this idea that we need to hide and pretend like it's not. I mean, I think that time is really kind of past. It never really was that time because like, one of the capitalists and imperialists and the CIA's literal strategy was to try to push into the masses, especially the educated masses, the idea of show don't tell, don't have messages, right? Don't be didactic, right? Like even William Gibson talked about it. I was worried I was too didactic, so I tried to make all of my politics more subdued and metaphorical, and it's always viewed as some kind of like evidence of your sophistication, right? And how the great writing, great art doesn't have messages. It doesn't have anything to say, doesn't have anything too loud, too direct, right? It doesn't have anything particular to say, because that would be crass. That would be like low class. That would be like of the commons, right? That would be like not good art. That would be like low quality art, right? But there's a point, because the CIA was the capitalists and the billionaire and oligarchic ruling classes that dominate the West, right? As we know, the plutocracy, which also controlled university, art departments, humanities departments, push that message. There's this whole documentation of it into English departments, but in humanities generally, and into art in general. And then if you get too loud and it makes too much change, then they just remove you from view if they have to. But ideally, people self-censor by choosing not to talk about politics because they view it, because it's easier to control people if they can't see the bars on the prison they're in, right? If people will keep themselves inside their own prison, you don't have to expend the resources that you could expend making rocket ships or like fighting imperialist wars, trying to right, control oil in the Gulf and losing to Iran. Right? If you got to control Americans at home to keep them capitalist or capitalist cogs in the machine, then now you're going to expend resources to blow up Vietnam and prevent the spread of communism there. How are you going to, right, try to blow up Iraq and steal its oil? How are you going to get into Venezuela, right? Overthrow their country, right? You got all these other countries around the world that have communist, socialist, revolutionary processes happening. If you got to control the imperial core countries, that's extra resources you got to expend. So ideally, you have people propagandized by Western liberal arts education to believe that having revolutionary political messages equals bad art, equals bad books, equals bad writing, equals bad movies, equals bad games. That's why everybody says that. Is that when people say I don't want politics in my games, it's because you were brainwashed to say that. Long story short. And it tends to be fools in a Mr. T sense that say that kind of nonsense. Anyway, but yeah, socialist, anti-colonialist. But that's why we need more of these, because if we really want to have the changes that people, I think, I don't think it really needs to be said as much. I think most people can see this. Like people are like sick of AI, people are sick of the billionaire class. People can see like their society's falling apart, unless you're in a little bubble where everyone around you is fine. But there's a lot of the world is running out of little bubble space for that. Certainly the Western world. But not only there, but anywhere you can't not see the issues, right? Even if you're in a socialist country, you can see that there's problems even inside your country, of a different kind. You're still dealing with the AI, this automation issue. You're dealing with it. You're going to deal with, as I like to call it, like kind of like a competition over attention, or attention, non-dollar capitalism, but attention capitalism is still going to be a problem, right? What to do with all this automation. And you're going to still have to, you're going to see that the world is in this kind of growing pains. Humanity as a species, global human civilization or civilizations are going through this like rebalancing in the new emerging multipolar world, which, everyone will benefit, right? Because it's a 500-year, global north extracting from the global south, 400, massive, certain people dominated and other people were subjugated and exploited, colonial relationship, right? A capitalist colonial relationship with the global north and the global south, the ruling class and the working class, and also the more privileged countries and the less privileged countries and their peoples, right? And so as that whole system like recalibrates and it kind of like it's like a hurricane falling apart, or like or that's not the best example because it's going to be destructive. It's going to be chaotic. But like people are having to reevaluate, right? The whole planet, everyone, entire countries are reevaluating who they are in the world, right? As or have to be, or some of them are like reviling or like almost fighting against it, thrashing against it. The U.S. and the West, thanks Europe, U.S., Canada, fighting back, not wanting to give up control, right? Trying to wrest control, like often shooting themselves in the foot, like U.S., Canada, Europe, like cutting themselves off from China and other countries that are like undeniably like you need them for just global existence. Speaking of material conditions, right? You're in a material condition where like you don't have an option but to rely on China and also its network of, it's not just it, but it's like the global South network of because it's also ASEAN and there's it's like the new Silk Road. You can't cut yourself out of that, and right, and so but there's people fighting against that. There's countries fighting against that. Corporations fighting against that, hurting themselves. So the more people can learn that like this is the new world we're moving towards, we need to like get with this program, right? And that can be facilitated in historical oppressor countries in the global north with more socialist, anti-colonial, everything, which includes, right, art. I mean, obviously just straight up education, but art, and that includes as a subsection of that games. Right, because I mean, the rebalancing is happening whether people like it or not, but it's going to be more destructive. It's going to be more painful. It's going to take longer, which means more people are going to suffer. People will be confused by like because it does hurt yourself. Because I was just listening to Germany is falling apart because the biggest auto purchaser was China. It was not really mentioned. They relied on and global markets. And they relied on cheap energy coming from, a very large geographic neighbor. All three of those things have just collapsed, and it's really in a bad place. And if the reaction is, well, let's remilitarize, let's super militarize. Well, I mean, that's what Germany did before World War II. No, I'm not saying that there's going to be World War II, but like that like because of a lack of understanding of what the new world that people are in, and the capitalist class would like people to misunderstand the world they're in as much and as long as possible to create more pain and havoc and chaos and cognitive dissonance and just misunderstandings and disorientation, because that benefits them. It keeps them in power a little bit longer, right? It's like the people divided from their reality. It's another one of the old Roman divide and conquer strategies, right? People that are disoriented, people are like their mind is divided from the reality on the ground, is one way you can divide and conquer people. Just like, I don't really get what's happening. I don't know. I'm just gonna like not get involved in nothing. We're like, oh, if we just fight this great war, we'll reclaim, we'll make our country great again, right? Like in that sense, like that is one, like that kind of like we're gonna get back our global north colonizer good world. Is a failure of education and art and entertainment, right? Which is political. That's how people get their knowledge, and the rest of right human output to correct that false consciousness. That's another Marxist term. They talk about false consciousness. I probably should talk about it in I Love Boosters too, right? So every person that has false consciousness is a failure to put correct consciousness in their brain. Right? If there's 4 billion people, I don't know how many. If there's 4 billion people, if there's 800 million in the global north and like 700 million have false consciousness, that's 700 million failures. Right? Every time you play Call of Duty and you play a game about shooting for a capitalist empire and billionaires to maintain global resource and supply chain and capital control, some global south country, some Arab country, Central West Asian African country, every time you play one of those games, you're reinforcing your colonial, imperialist, right, modern star-spangled stormtrooper centurion mindset, right? Every time you play, or when you watch some of these news articles, it's about like any second now we're gonna win this imperialist war or something else. The false consciousness is being reinforced. That's a failure, right? So, but in the movies, you watch Black Hawk Down. You think Iraq War was good, right? You think Vietnam War was just about how American soldiers felt sad. That's not. That's false consciousness. The reality was an imperialist aggression, and the U.S. lost. Right? And why did they fight it? Why did they even fight it? That's not even brought up. So that's all. Like, that's better than just like the Vietnam War was good, and the problem was we didn't kill enough Vietnamese or something like that. Like, there's like a more just hard right, conservative, far right take. But like the liberal take is also false consciousness, and that's not sufficient. That's going to prolong the suffering of people around the world, including in America, including in Europe, including in Canada, including in privileged first world countries. Right? Because it means it's going to take longer to organize everybody to get to where we need to go. Which is also illustrated in I Love Boosters. Just I keep using it because it's a good shorthand right now. A lot of people have heard of it or seen it. Which is why we need, but we don't, because, right, imagine if like we had, instead of like a bunch of like quote unquote apolitical, read actually political, and it sides with the U.S. and U.S. empire, and colonialism and capitalism and neocolonialism and imperialism. Imagine if every movie was like a Boots Riley's I Love Boosters type movie. Right? Or something like that. Maybe not all the same genre, but like communicating better politics, right? Imagine if every game, right? Not every game would be Neofeud 2, where it's like a anti-capitalist, anti-colonialist game about, building multipolarity, realizing that you live that you can house, feed, clothe, and care for people easily, and it's just, a tiny minority of oligarch capitalists that is preventing people and confusing people to stop that from happening. And you could rise up and change that, which is, Neofeud 2 is about that. It's about ending the capitalist system, and it's, building socialism and a multipolar indigenous galaxy, but, as a metaphor for the earth. This is what this is a picture of. It's an indigenous socialist successful civilization as a counterexample to a collapsing dystopian Western capitalist imperial core country. So not every game has to do that. Right, and they can't all do that because every game dev isn't Silver Spook. It's not me. They're not me. But like, if like the games don't have to, I don't think game devs and indie game devs should or need to pretend like they don't have messages in their games, because they're not political, because they all are. The people that claim that games aren't political, they're a dwindling smaller number of like pretty. These people, like, let's just say, like their world is shrinking. Like, their world is shrinking. Like, U.S. and Western access and control over global resources and control over global power is shrinking. Right? And like, because like, I know, because there's somebody who laughed in Neofeud 2. There's somebody, there's a lot of people that really loved it. I'm glad to hear everybody talking about it. And, if you have a second if you like Neofeud 2, don't forget to leave a Steam review if you liked it, because it does help us. Not everybody does, but it was really sad. This was one person who really, you can actually almost see the decline of the Western, white supremacist capitalist world, because there's somebody who would like really like, was a real right-wing, grifty type of person that, kind of told privileged people in the first world what they wanted to hear. And they had a lot more like visibility and followers, like relatively, in the 20 when Neofeud came out. They actually played it, and it was, and I was like, oh, well, that's not great. There's more than one, actually. And like now it's like, oh, my family's sick, I'm broke, my life is falling apart. It's like really sad, and it's like, but some of those people, are still clinging to, but like, immigrants are here, and like we just clean them up, and any second now, this Western country, our country's gonna be great again once we just get rid of the women in the games and the people of color in the game. And it's like, but look at your life, man. Your life is falling apart. It's just depressing to watch you do that, and you're just surrounding yourself with other like basically straight cis white guys whose lives is falling apart, like your Western country, in like deep denial. And like, so I mean, my point is that like those people are out there, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, but their ability to, capitalism is falling apart. I mean, Gen AI is not working out. Nobody wants it. They keep trying to shove it down people's throats. Humans are reviling against it. People are weird. Like, people will sit there, like I said, and stare at like, right, 300 pieces of flattened tree bark with little like ink etchings on it. People are odd, but people are also don't want to be lied to. I've seen various commentators, like Hollywood just union just signed a strike, a document saying that over 90% voted no AI, no Gen AI and anything. And and one of the strikers, one of the unionized laborers said, well, like humans don't like want to be lied to. People don't want, like, and coming back to games, like they talk about low effort posts, like low effort, like if somebody, like it's like a thing, right? It's shit post means like you didn't put any energy into that. You just spent 5 seconds and you just threw that out there, right? You just like typed a bunch of stuff into your phone or your computer and you spat that out there. It's like a low effort post, right? Like these shovelware games, when people like when come back to when there's more accessibility, which is not necessarily bad, but suddenly almost anybody could just grab a bunch of mushrooms or goblins or zombies and even code and even levels and slap it together and throw a game up on Steam or put a game out on somewhere on a platform, right? Steam was where a lot of these went. And people got flooded with all of these like low effort games. They call them like asset flips. It's kind of alluding to like house flipping, just trying to make money by reselling a house, taking advantage of, the housing markets and just capitalist tulip manias. But it's just like throwing games out there because you can just quickly in like less than a day make a, just basically take already made work, stick it together and make a game. Now that like if somebody took a bunch of random zombies and then some ninjas and then some pirates, stuck it in a game, it was all. Cause I remember the Commander Sterling channel had like a critique of this, like played some of these games. It was like, this game has ninjas and zombies and pirates. Like I'm like clipping through walls. It's got a few houses in it. The houses are like not related to. I don't understand why these are there. And then there's like a dragon that doesn't do anything. Somebody just dropped these assets, right? That's what I call it, assets. They drop these assets from the Unity store into a game, and then they spat it out of Unity and they put it up on Steam. And like there's more of these games being, and people, because if people keep playing like low quality games, right, over time there's the saturation and there's the exhaustion effect where people just like, I'm not going to play any more games, I'm not going to look at this storefront anymore. And that's an existential, and it's bad for all of humans. It's bad because they're like, it's hard for people to find quality things. It's also bad for the stores. It's bad. I mean, it's ultimately in the long run, because then it's like, well, I'm not coming to your store anymore. And like the same thing happened with mobile games, where it's all about tricking people into spending money with all kind of microtransactions and freemium that just like weaponizing people's dopamine and like just all game companies were just and banks and corporations which were making money hand over fist with these, just like weaponizing, hiring psychologists to weaponize the kinks and weirdnesses and little idiosyncrasies and like aspects of human psychology to trick people into spending money on things. Because again, what a capitalist corporation that's right, whether it's Unity, whether it's somebody make a phone game, mobile, Steam game, or whether it's a one of these game platforms like PC games, Steam games, whatever kind of games are, the platforms themselves, the corporations that are pumping these things out. Sometimes there are banks that are pumping out these tons and tons of mobile games, right? To just try to like make a ton of money, investing a little bit into, the actual output, but just trying to maximize the amount people are spending. The goal is always to maximize profit under the capitalist structure, right? That's part of why games are bad themselves, is because of capitalism. We talk about, a lot of people talk about that. I talk about that. But, that's another point that needs to be made. That's part of why the quality of the games have gone down. And like, also like, why are people and so that asset flips, like my point is like Gen AI is in one sense what was already happening with the game industry, right? Which was, people putting, like, because with Gen AI, you put in low effort, you just put in a prompt, you just type some words in, right? And then it's just like, it's kind of like, it's basically a step above there's a Street Fighter Reddit that said, somebody tried to post an AI generated Street Fighter character, and it said, this is not acceptable for many reasons. Well, A, we don't accept AI. B, like, anything you generate, you didn't, it's it's basically the effort of a Google image search, right? So that's a low effort post, which we don't allow those, right? And it's not actually from Street Fighter because it's Gen AI. It was slapped together from other existing Street Fighter characters. Whatever it is, it's not a real Street Fighter character. So we're not accepting those. But the low effort of, right, Gen AI, it's people who like, a lot of people who put those shovelware games in the teens, right? By just before Gen AI, but just using a bunch of assets and sticking them together really quick in like, a fraction, 1% of the time it would take to make a real game or less. People who didn't have a lot of talent, people didn't want to work on art skills, didn't want to work on programming skills, they didn't work on any kind of skills of any kind, writing skills. They just wanted to put a game out there, right? Because they saw, well, if I put my game on Steam, they were looking at Hollow Knight, they're looking at, the big games, they're looking at Undertales, I could make $1 billion. So there's a profit motive because that's a capitalist problem, right? That's, so there's all these low barrier entry tools, which is not necessarily bad, plus capitalist incentives for humans, right? So now humans become that which is that which takes accessible digital tools and then infuriates others by pissing in the pool of platforms by putting out just tsunamis of low quality garbage games, hoping falsely, with false consciousness, that they're going to become a multimillionaire releasing this game. Because some people were just like some MBA to like, well, I can make a ton of money if I get lucky and win this slot machine of releasing games to Steam. Maybe I'll become the next big hit, right? The reality is you're probably not, because the kind of game you're making is not the kind of game that's going to go big, because it's not a very fun game. It's a low quality game. Right? That's part of why there's all these angry gamers going like, what are all these games coming out on Steam? And then they had to, they made Steam Direct later on to try to increase the barriers to entry to a little bit more, so that it wasn't as easy to just like, because if it's free to put a game up, then it was like, you could just keep dropping games, and even like selling the trading cards from the game, just like selling the material, the generated, the social material, forget that come out of the games. That was one way people were just making money, by just trying to farm like gems and stuff from the games. And if the barrier entry was 0, and there's billions of people on the planet, right? You're gonna have lots of people that are gonna keep trying to game the gaming system. However, like, it's not a very, obviously it's terrible. It causes it is a, not tragedy to the comments, but it has a net negative impact on all of the gamers and all of humanity, because it's harder to weed through all of this material to get through actually good games. But it's perpetuated because, but see, if people weren't incentivized to maximize their personal wealth, right? If people like, if the human species, I'm not saying everyone is one way or the other, but if certainly America, right, was not driven, and Western countries were not driven, people weren't driven to just get money no matter what, just get your bag, just get your cash, just win the lottery, right? If that wasn't there would be way, way, way less low quality tsunami of shovelware, and which is the same AI. A lot of the AI problem is people are going, well, I wanted to be an artist, a game dev, but it takes time and effort, energy, and either I want to make money, or I want to be like renowned for a game, and maybe I'll get fame and accolades. Because if you're asset flipping, you're not, the joy that you're getting, the reason why you're doing it's not because you like creating art, right? Because you're just grabbing somebody else's material and just like throwing it there. You like, what do you want? You want the feeling like you made a game? You just want to put something out there? I mean, and like there's ways that you could use, like, obviously some store purchase assets that's not necessarily like that. You could also like fill out a catalog, or, there's some legitimate way. But a lot of people that were doing these very low quality games were just grabbing a bunch of material, and then some of these people had some of them were like middle class, like business people who have no art talent, skills, they have no art, creative, writing skills, which takes time and effort to hone, right? And they spend that time getting a Harvard MBA or whatever they did. Not all of them, Um, um, and there's some kind of people that, they went into crypto, they went into NFTs, right? And then they went into like AI is just the next NFT in that sense, right? It's like, oh, I could make a lot of money, I could gain notoriety, I could be known as some kind of important person, and maybe make a bank while using this new feature that big, huge corporations, huge entities, right, mega banks and corporations are getting people to get into crypto, get into NFTs, get into asset flipping, because Unity is a corporation, right? It's like if millions of people around the world who don't have a lot of talent, if we can convince them that they can all be game devs, right? Because all they care about is the capitalist bottom line, make more money. If we get millions of people just buying all these, right, zombies and character and 3D levels and programming, right, and like you can make all the cars and the code that goes into a racing game or a Metroidvania. You get a bunch of sprites, just buy all these assets from our asset store, get a bunch of characters, levels, dragons, fireball spells, all these guns, buy all these asset packs. If millions of people are going to buy assets, they're like selling people the idea that they're game devs in one sense, right? That's part of what like Unity was. That's just how they were making money, is selling like thousands and thousands, because people spend thousands of dollars on this, just hundreds or thousands of dollars to millions of people who wanted a shortcut to being a game dev, right? Now, some people are like just using Unity and like making the game in Unity, that's part of it. But you know what I'm saying is if you're a capitalist corporation, you don't really care if this is having a negative impact, because there's just floods of games coming out. In the way that this features are being used, you're gonna have a flood of games coming out that makes it very difficult for people to find games. And then you absolutely need curators, and even still, people are just like a lot of people just have given up trying to find any games, right? In a lot of these spaces. I mean, I get exhausted myself. People are not even looking. I mean, and like when AI was added into that, then suddenly you could generate. You didn't even need to go and pick the games up and stick them together in a level. With some of the AI tools, it will like automate a lot of that process for you. But what it's doing, right, is fundamentally because Gen AI relies on stealing other humans' creations, art, 3D, 2D art, characters, animations, like performances, facial and physical, writing, music, sound effects that humans have created, and then jumbling it up, remixing it, and spitting something out that kind of resembles the previous patterns that it had consumed, right? With ever increasing entropy each time, wasting water, destroying the planet, increasing electricity out, wasting electricity, and making trillionaires, and basically destroying everything. Also backing global fascist military, helping all kind of doing all kind of terrible things. Most of it is like very racist and sexist. That's the kind of people that are used and involved in it. So it keeps on moving in that direction. I remember when I first used, not first used, but when I first looked at the outputs that were coming out, it was like it's taking people of color and making them look whiter and whiter, and erasing, all kind of like nose and face and hair features, and and it's anyway. So there's all kind of horrible aspects to Gen AI in particular. But what it's doing is fundamentally similar to what the asset flips are doing, which is giving people who didn't want to put a lot of effort. It tends to be like more non-creative, like more straight and more man and more business, less writer, less English major, less art major, right? Less people that produce actual writing, art, and music. And those people who are in business, or maybe some of them are just like engineers who like look down at artists, and that's a whole problem in and of itself. We're like, well, I just need this art, and our art is not a serious life endeavor anyway. Like, art is easily replaceable. We don't need artists, we don't need creators, we don't need writers, which I think is false. I mean, I do code, I'm an engineer, but I'm also an artist too. I'm in multiple worlds. I mean, I wrote, the writing, the programming, the art, the music, composed the music, I hand painted the art, coded the code. I didn't vibe code it, by the way. Also, I coded the code. It's like JavaScript or C++ like script in Adventure Game Studio. It took me a long time. It's like 100. I don't know how. It's a massive amount of code. There's like 140,000 words in the script, and the code is more altogether. Is way more than that. So like I know what it is to be an engineer, and which is separate from being a business bro capitalist, but both of those can have like misunderstandings, or like, just kind of antagonism towards the arts, which I think is another dichotomy. I'll leave that for another time. I don't want to get too deep into that because that's a huge topic. But certainly for the people that want to produce a game, Gen AI accelerated the already existing problems that some of the game industry that was kind of praying, or that was allowing people to create these low effort games in mass for profit and for personal false dreams of becoming famous as a game dev, right? Or just a feeling of being a game dev. So the people who first used Gen AI, a lot of them, right? A lot of them still do, didn't want to take the time to put in to become a great writer. And they said, look, with Gen AI, now I can write, Pride and Prejudice and Space Pirates. Look, now I'm a writer. Now with Gen AI, I can create movies. Look, I made this movie. Now with Gen AI, I can create games. Look, I created this game. It's Sonic the Hedgehog. Look, with Gen AI, now I can create great art. Look, with DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, or with ChatGPT and me, we created this beautiful poem, or we created this beautiful landscape. I'm like, you did, like, right? But it's like, like that Street Fighter Reddit post. Like, this is basically the effort of a Google. That's what I always thought. This is like a Google image search, but then like hiding all of the credits of where the image came from, basically, right? It's what Gen AI is doing, right? It's like, it's pretending like when you Google image search, Leaning Tower of Pizza cartoon, that you created the cartoon of the Leaning Tower of Pizza. What you Google image searched it. That was, you prompted Google to spit the image out. It's taking Google image search and turning Google image search into like a self-esteem booster. Like, oh my God, not only did you search up the picture of Donatello from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you created Donatello from I remember I made like at least like, there's at least 3 separate Silver Spoon streams like early on where I was like, that's basically what you're doing. Which is what it is, right? Because it's spicy autocomplete, it's stochastic parroting, it's just pattern mimicry software. That's what Gen AI is doing. But that speeds up an already existing Gen AI. It's more than just that. It's doing a few other things too that is worse. But it's multiplying the amount of Gen AI output that is in the world. Or it's multiplying the amount of low effort output, video, art, text, books, emails. I mean, everything, right? Just multiplying the amount of low effort output in the world and simulating. It's everyone is having a mass digital slot machine consciousness now. You're that which hits the prompt slot machine, right? Everybody who's using it, or even being forced to use it. Some people, unfortunately, right? Just your work, teachers, people working, their bosses are forcing them to use this stuff, and it's like a lot of people that you're like, this is not good. It's not really working. And another factor is that people are who, because I create games because I like creating games. Like, yeah, sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it takes a long time, but like that's like, and there are tools that I use to speed things up. Like I use Photoshop, so I don't repaint every single time I make a new character animation. I don't repaint every single frame. I use like rotation. There's some tools that's like makes things faster that, but like and this is where it gets really in the weeds. But it's like, the way that Gen AI is functioning, or the way that it's particularly when you use it to create art and your intellectual and creative output, it's removing all this. There's these thousands and thousands of like miniature, like micro decisions, almost like that you're constantly making. Even like when you're using your hand and making brushstrokes, like there's like all this information, and there's this whole process. There's a human process that you're going through, which itself is full of like ups and downs, and endorphins and serotonin, and like thinking and like rethinking thought that you had, and all these like, and even like literal serendipities. It's talking about like hey, I'm walking here is actually like Al Pacino staying in character in a movie. It was just an accident. It was like a happy accident, and now it's like an iconic thing. But which wouldn't have happened if like all these skilled and talented people hadn't built up years of skills in writing, production, lighting, acting, directing, cinematography. And then this accident happened, So it's like art is like a living thing that humans are doing. It itself is like dialectically transforming and it's a dialectically transforming and positive endorphin releasing experience, and it also transforms other humans that experience it. And to remove all the humans removes like basically the whole point of it in one sense, right? It's like it's for those who don't. That's why if you are somebody who is not doing art or creating or like writing, musical, visual, animation, or doing some kind of theater, doing some kind of art in your life on a regular basis, or haven't done it, don't respect it. That's what like the science, tech, engineering, math, and the business oriented people are some of those people, right? That more of them actually use Gen AI. In part because some of them don't even know what they're missing. I would argue capitalism could be done if everyone like had a better, arts and creation sort of experience, and and also were like engaging with those aspects of themselves. And obviously, material conditions were better for people that were like stuck in starvation, right? Because it's hard to do art when you're trying to find food. Not impossible, but difficult. But sorry, I'm like way off in a lot of different topics at this point. But that's why I think that we need more human-made games. Come back to the Steam Next Fest. Like there was 4,000. Right, there's another basically almost 1,000 games, which I think some people were saying. Forget who it was. It was an Indie Games podcast that said basically all of those are generative AI. Just 1,000 more generative AI, just Gen AI slop games. And people were again complaining that like there's too many of these. It's harder and harder for me to get through. Like it's harder to even discover games if I have like a 50% or more chance of playing just a Gen AI low effort game and some of the other games that are not Gen AI could also be low effort or like a game I'm not interested in. And if I'm going to be playing Gen AI when I'm trying to discover new games, then I'm not going to even use Steam Next Fest. And so if the point is for people to discover these new great games and nobody's looking at it, the whole entire point of that whole thing is to feed it, right? So anyway, I'm not saying Steam wants that to happen. I'm saying like that's a problem that they have to deal with. And everyone has to, right? The platforms, people. And coming back to it, right? Like asset flips wouldn't have happened, or way less of them would happen, if people had all the material conditions met, right? If people weren't struggling to get money for food or house, clothing, medical care, overpriced, medical bills, just scrambling to be able to afford, their basic material needs, right? Under a capitalist system, which is it's different in non-capitalist places. I can go think about where those are, but you can still scramble even in other places without capitalism. So you have other kinds of hyper competition, or call it like cutthroat, or there can be extreme competition, even in a place that has a communist party or socialism of various kinds, for different reasons. That's a whole other, dealing with that's still a problem too. But if when it comes to just figuring out how to maximize your personal material needs, that is another layer that adds to the incentive, right, to just go out and create like a low quality product. I would say actually the competition in non-capital, I was thinking of the US's number one peer competitor. There's a different kind of competition though, right? It's not competition to just get a ton of money doing something very sleazy. Although sometimes that can happen. It's more competition to produce the most competent technologies, which is it's a bit different. But like in the U.S. For sure, those people who are just putting out a bunch of games hoping they make $1 million from one. You could put out, like with AI, you could put out multiple games per day, right? Silver Spill Games, our rate of output is like one game every 9 years. But if you're using Gen AI, doing low effort, right, generative game. You can make multiple games in a day and just start throwing them out there. No, there is a little friction because Steam is going to charge you $100, but there's other platforms. And even still, some people who have a lot of money to spend will like, I want to make millions. I'll spend like I'll spend $3,000 and put 30 games up, right? Maybe one of them will work, right? Maybe eventually they burn out, but there's 8 billion people who every day, right? More suckers can start entering the digital online casino of Gen AI, right? And so that's the whole problem. So you have always, as long as people still exist and believe and have these false consciousnesses of capitalism, of don't understand what Gen AI is doing, the problems of it, as long as those exist, and you have all these perverse motives like trying to get money to survive, people are going to keep, some people, not everyone, but some people are going to keep on using this Gen AI to put out this low quality stuff, making it worse for everybody, making true gems more difficult to discover. It hurts the people that use it because they're not exploring their own human potential, right? They're kind of like sitting there being addicted to the gambling machine, right? It's part of why gambling is not, you can't do it everywhere, right? Just, it's like shooting up drugs. Like it feels good while you're doing it. And like, maybe your life's, but over time, it's not good for you. It's not good for the whole society, right? So, there's obviously this AI psychosis. There's all kind of host of other problems when people start using Gen AI. Not to mention empowering these horrible ultra rich techno king type peoples that we don't want to be any more empowered. So so that's why we need more. And so I think that all this is simultaneously happening together, right? So if the capitalist system can, at least be eroded, or people can turn against it, that and more conditions are alleviated, people understand the problems of it, the less likely those people are to engage in AI, just because of the politics of AI. The perverse incentives of, as capitalism erodes, the perverse incentives of AI to push people into doing these kind of desperate things, using AI out of this kind of like desperation. Because if people like didn't have to worry about those bills, if you really wanted to make art, just go and make art, like just draw, right? Because like Google, because Gen AI is basically prompting. Like, who wants to just sit there and prompt, right? If you're making art, you want to make art for. To me, I guess some people are. Humans are a bit odd. Some of them will just sit there and want to just type in Google searches, right? But if you're doing it because of you think you're gonna make a bunch of money, if you don't care about making a bunch of money, that already takes away a huge set of. A huge big incentive to jump in and just to go, well, I'll save a bunch of time and I'll Gen AI it, right? But then also, for those who are like, well, for the people who are just like, I just want to play around with art, then it's like, if you want to play around with art, that's one thing, but people can tell when people are faking. People can tell where they're lied to, right? If somebody knows, hey, you sent an email to me and you use Gen AI to write it, well, you didn't think it was worth your time to write that email or create that, whatever it is, that image or whatever, that book or that game, and definitely that message. If you felt that it wasn't worth your time to create it, why should I take my time to read the thing you didn't take time to make, right? You put low effort into your message, so I'm going to put low or no effort into reading and responding to it, right? And that's part of why like Gen AI is imploding. That's another layer to this. People just are repulsed by. People want humans with human authentic interaction and authentic human engagement, right? People don't want to be treated like some kind of tissue paper. People don't want to be thought of as like a it's kind of like after the fact. People don't want to be lied to, because it is kind of lying too. And so that's a and the same thing goes for games. Like you didn't take time to actually make this game. You kind of tricked me into thinking I was playing like a serious game. And now I'm just kind of mad. I'm mad that I got tricked. I'm upset that this game is bad, because that tends to also be that's the case. I mean, it's basically always the case. Like, if there's issues with it, like you don't even know what you created, so you can't fix them. That's a whole other can of worms there. And so those are also so I think I mean, I hope over time, just basically the incentive, because this is why part of why Gen AI has to be forced on everyone's throat, because it's so bad. It has to be like ultra super subsidized by billions and trillions ultimately, just like paying people to use it, or threatening people with their jobs if they don't use it, just putting ads everywhere. You turn on Instagram, YouTube, any platform, anywhere you look, there's some kind of thing. Use AI on Slack. Use AI to summarize the conversation. Like, I don't need a broken software to summarize what my friend said. I want to connect with my friends. I don't want to relate to my friends through software, which could be manipulated by horrible eldritch trillionaires who want to brainwash everyone by cutting up people. One thing it does is also cut people off from each other, which is great for removing the mass class collective human. If you want to, as Boots Riley said, which I think is not false, you want to organize conscious workers that are working together in close collaboration. If you want to disconnect all those workers, Gen AI is a great way to do that, right? And put someone in between, put the corporation in between all of the 8 billion humans and cut them off, right? Because then, right? That's one reason just for that. If you're a leftist of any kind, you should not be using any Gen AI. Certainly not for in between communication with your fellow humans and your fellow comrades, because anything you say, how can you know that it was actually what your friend or your fellow tenant or workers or game workers union member said, right? It just there's so many reasons that it's terrible. It's like if people that disproportionate, it's inversely people who understand AI. The relationship between people who understand AI and people who use AI is inversely proportional. So basically, more people who are more ignorant of or less understanding of or not educated on how generative AI actually functions, right? Those are people that actually use it. They're like, it's magical system that just outputs beautiful pictures and art for me. It tends to be older people, older people, and just people that just like don't understand it. Like people that are don't actually understand the programming. It tends to obviously be less artists and creators, who also tend to know more about this system that has them under attack. And so, anyways, okay. So, but that's why we need more of these kinds of games, because these people are gonna keep on producing art, and including interactive art, and other kinds of output. Though, and again, go back to the anti-colonial aspects of it. It's I'm as a native Hawaiian, we have we're in our own position. It's not in one sense it's kind of dire. In one sense it's kind of great, because the U.S. because the U.S. is the imperial country that's occupying our nation. But we're still in a fight like everybody else, and so we need to have and it's difficult because people. I was talking with EJ. It's like people are given a colonial consciousness. They're giving whiteness in exchange for all of the authentic cultures that you came from way back. EJ's trying to get back. American Johnson is one of the voice actors in Navy too. He's trying to get back in touch with his Irish heritage, right? Going way back, and just kind of researching and studying about that, because that's one thing that you give up to become part of an empire, certainly the U.S. empire, in a settler colonial capitalist empire. And so in that sense, and there's also a certain aspect that you get from Christianity, certainly Western Catholic and Protestant types of Christianity, which Marx himself said that religion was opiate of the masses. And obviously, it's a human belief in spirituality is a complex thing. But my parents for sure were given white American, but like slightly wrong color, white American Catholic identity, Catholic liberal identity as kind of substitute for who they actually were, which is Asian and Pacific Islander and Hawaiians, people from Hawaii of the nation. And so that is another false consciousness, a colonizer consciousness that is installed, and Nephi 2 also deals with this what it means to be what it means to be an indigenous person. Some in the empire, some people indigenous like under assault, but most indigenous people are realistically like living in like cities actually. Some are in more rural areas or in reservations and places like that. But it's a really it itself is a complex thing in dealing with being a Native Hawaiian anti-capitalist cyberpunk retro game programmer is like what I am, right? And but also trying to maintain the nation, restore our land and our food systems, our ahupua'a systems of abundance. It's a really complicated, complex thing where you have multiple. You have American reality, you have Hawaiian reality, you have like Hawaiian university educated, decolonial, but kind of still mentally colonized reality. There's like Hawaiian, like nation of Hawaii. There's like just like deep, like full sovereignty, like total decolonial Hawaiian consciousness. There's like Pidgin, just like locals. There's like all these other cultures that I've all kind of come and visited that are hosted here, like Chinese, and there's Vietnamese. Diaspora Chinese from 1800s, the modern Japanese. I mean, there's all this layers of complexity, in Hawaii. It's not to say other places don't have it, but it's all this. It's all culture, it's all experiences, it's all material and immaterial reality, because some of it's coming through screens in that sense. That is like constantly transforming and or is in all kinds of different contradictions inside of all these people in Hawaii, just as one example. And so what is the indigenous conscience? What is a Hawaiian conscience? What is a Hawaiian nation? I remember like really struggling with that when I was in college. I was like, what the heck am I? Like, I'm Hawaiian, but I'm like, everything I know is American. I barely know the language. I didn't even know what colonized meant. I didn't even know I was colonized. Right? Which is by design, is to create an imperial. That's part of creating an empire. It's part of creating a capitalist, imperialist, Death Star and all the stormtroopers is by keeping everybody sort of just rewriting this imperial consciousness, this Americanness into everyone, this whiteness and Americanness, or just with it can be a little token Japanese at the parties, and then go back to just being a good McDonald's eating American, or Starbucks drinking American, depending on you're more conservative or liberal. Just take your pick, and then stay in that lane and keep on blowing up the rest of the world and sucking the resources out and making billionaires. So that's the another layer of that. That's we need doing more of those games, because if the world is becoming more decolonized, many people are realizing that people are going to have to reevaluate, and the next generation is going to be raised in a different way. That's one question I try to answer, and if you do is, what would a decolonized planet, what would the decolonized America and also decolonized Europe look like, right? The answer is, it's not going to happen. Like, it will take time, like building socialism, like building communism. It's not going to happen like immediately. It takes time. But there's things that people can do and choose to do, ways you can choose to think, right? A lot of people, like EJ is trying to get more in touch with, like, trying to not like disassociate from like a kind of white conservative Christian American culture, and like try to recall the Irish or just like others, like just to reroot oneself, right? In something other than this like deeply toxic, obviously racist, imperialist, chauvinistic consciousness and identity. And I would say, even more importantly, like future generations, right? It's difficult to redo the last 40 years of your life when you're 43, but children can grow up and build, because you ultimately cannot do that, right? Like I am always going to be kind of half stormtrooper, because I was forcefully Americanized by the private, public, and charter schools that teach that Hawaiians are all dead, and here's a coloring book, and the country. Well, it was a bunch of backwards brown people in mud huts. It's irrelevant. Ancient Hawaiians existed like unknown centuries or millennia ago. Who cares? Don't look it up. Kind of like communism. It's some kind of weird thing out there. It's dangerous and it's bad. Don't look it up. You don't have any heritage of it anywhere. Nobody in your family ever was that, right? Because both Holly and my family, my grandpa was actually a communist note taker. He was like the lead recorder for the communist chapter in Honolulu. He's also worked for the newspaper. It was like one of the, but it was part of a mass labor struggle to bring about global equality for all people. But like that's completely erased from all our family history, just like the entire history of the Hawaiian occupation. Individuals do it out of fear, out of survival, out of terror, or like universities like pushing like we don't be political. Everyone does that because they believe it's like a carrot. It will make your art good, but the anti-communism and self-erasure of our Hawaiian history is also partially out of fear of like, what if, family gets interned because my grandma was Asian? What if we're outed as communists? Or what if, people think that we're some kind of weird radicals, right? We're like anti-American and that could be bad. How we're going to get a job in the university, right? In the schools, in the military, in the government, which is in the tourism industry, which is what we have to work in, right? So that, but creates its, my point is that like all that was wiped out. It can be recreated, like in our kids and other people in younger generations. If people are educated differently, right, then it will create new people, and so people are instilled with a sense of their cultural heritage, their colonizer, their indigenous. What that exactly means is I can't get into that right now, but like just rooted in some other kind of identity, because people need identity. People have needs. People want to belong. People want to feel like they're part of a group. People want to feel like I talked about this last time. There's meaning in their life. People want to feel like they have traditions. Like people like traditions, right? People are squirrels, right? But people are also elephants. Elephants have traditions, They have rituals and things that they do, right? They have, there's pastimes. Even the animals at the zoo, right? Now humans have more complex cultural traditions. What exact tradition they do, like lighting the candles, gathering inside of a building and saying, "Our Father who art in heaven," like I pledge allegiance to the flag, the American tradition of, spending $65,000 on a crappy barbecue and burning hamburger and eating it for some weird reason, right? The American July 4th tradition. People want some kind of tradition that will bind them together in a community or feel them part of something larger, a civilization, a social group, a culture, a heritage, right? They want those rituals. People need to like just move and get energy out of their body, dancing. Like there's a bone dance coming up, right? What exactly that tradition is, what exactly the physical action is, what exactly, right? The culture, what exactly the thing that helps you to get through the day and deal with death and loss and love and marriage and the fears of having children, right? Was part of what the church, right? And the Western culture serves. Right? It's there to help you, recognize, hey, and our dearly beloveds are gathered here today, and so, but how exactly you do that? It's different in different cultures, and some cultures, unfortunately, like have like deeply toxic aspects attached to them, so like rerouting. I'm like deep in this topic. I probably gotta wrap this video. Is different, and so near it too. Like one of the solutions, actually, there's a line I think Princess Sybil says something like, "Your children, like the soon there will be no utopians, or over time, your children and your grandchildren will be native to this land. I am not, right? But your children and your grandchildren, eventually your grandchildren will be native to this land, because they will be raised within the culture and she's like a visitor to this place, and they'll be raised in the culture from which, or from the indigenous culture, this indigenous socialist culture, which this of Eden. They will no longer be American. Americanness will die out, or it's in this case it's utopian, but it's kind of like an equivalent. I'm not saying Americanness has to die out. I'm just saying like the one way this is happening is the transformation is because your utopian culture did not transform. People refused to raise their children. People detached themselves. They rerouted you tried to root indigenous people into a racist capitalist empire, and people, young parents, right, especially women and left and just people in general, are rerouting their children away from a racist capitalist empire into an indigenous heritage, right? And their children are being raised in that with a different culture, right? Than those that were for survival because they were forced, brainwashed, get on a ship on the Mayflower, right, or a pilgrim, came into a colonizer culture and assimilated. But people can be disassimilated, right? People can assimilate into a white, racist, capitalist, selfish culture of fearful people holding on to guns in their suburbs, and also in their liberal capitalist, self-righteous parts of cities, and believing their American way or the Western way is the best, right? People can assimilate into these cultures. People can also like disassimilate from them and integrate into different cultures because that's part of dialectical transformation, to kind of try to end on that, which is that each generation there's a new set of people that will be new people, right? And unless humans become something other kind of species, that's Marx didn't really calibrate for that one. If a species that never reproduces and is an infinite immortal group of a billion digital consciousnesses, maybe we don't quite have that one. Yes, that's a different problem. But until then, humans are born and live and die for between 60, 80, 100 years. If you got COVID, your life drops a whole bunch. If you're in poverty, your life is a bit shorter. But people are born and they have to be raised and they're transformed, and then eventually, Sam Altman wants a world where it's just ChatGPT. There's like a trillion virtual people inside ChatGPT's brain, and we're gonna just like do stonk trades based upon these trillion humans' virtual mortgages, right? That's Sam Altman's solution. That's a non-solution. That's a joke. But humans are born and raised and die, and they have to, so they're gonna go through these transformations. So if the young are raised differently, then there will be different humans in the future. People that are alive that are 30, 40 now, like millennials like myself, we can change. We're not immovable, but it's very difficult to completely, if not impossible, to completely change us. And soon we will be dead. I mean, that's the fact, right? And so that's one aspect of dialectical materialism that really scares a lot of the Western world, which fears death irrationally and kind of toxically, and yearns for immortality. Like all the trillionaires like Peter Thiel and Musk, right? They're always researching up infinite life solutions and cures, and more life for me as a greed for not just dollars, not just oil, not just lithium, not just rare earths, but also greed for the ultimate commodity that is time, having all the time. And that's one thing that stops the dialectical transformations also in the first world, is the lack of understanding and acceptance of that reality. Because you do have to accept that the future, right? To do dialectical materialism where things are being transformed over time, it may take a lot of time to transform the world into the world you want. You have to accept that you may not see that world. But if you live in a culture, right? This is where culture matters. A culture that does not even care about a time in which they're not alive. They don't care about future generations, really. They care about their life, right? It's about me, myself, and I, right? Just for that reason, you cannot really do socialism. You can't really seriously practice dialectical materialism in any significant sense, because the reality is, it can transform your life. But the probability is that if things are successful, it's more likely it'll more deeply transform future people's lives. It might actually cost you in the present, right? Because making revolutions is not easy. It takes work. It's hard. It might actually cost you a little more in your life to make future people's lives better, And so that's something, like dialectical materialism. That's part of that's partially that's something that I think it goes beyond simply understanding socialism, communism, and dialectical materialism. It's a moral, it's a value question. It's partially a cultural question as well. You know, which is like, yes, we could transform the world if we do X and Y and Z. I understand the science of that, right? Like, yes, I understand. Mathematically, we could have large amounts of renewable energy if the whole world had solar panels. Yes, and renewable wind and hydro power. Yes, I don't want that because I'm a trillionaire. I'm a billionaire. I want to be a trillionaire. And if everyone gets solar, then the world will become liberated and capitalism could end. And so I understand the science of it. I would argue empire understands the science of renewable. It doesn't want it because it brings sovereignty to the global south, which jeopardizes imperialism and capitalism. A capitalism which is sustained by global super profits under imperialism, right? So I understand. So people could understand, yes, dialectical materialism. People understand perfectly Marxism, Leninism, dialectical materialism, socialism, even communism. Understand like all the read Das Kapital front to back, memorize it, understand how it works, even know how to practice it. Because practicing dialectical materialism and Marxist thinking is different from understanding it too. But you could even know how to practice it, and you'd be like, "But I don't want to practice it because I just want to have more things for me now. I don't care about the future because I'm a selfish individualist. It's part of my Western nature that I was raised in. That's So that it's beyond. I think it's a mistake to believe because people understand the technicalities and the science of transformation of the world, because you could also use the science of transformation of the world to de-transform it into a worse state. You could be like, well, dialectically, if bombs happen in X and Y and Z country, chaos ensues. If chaos ensues, demand for, right, that will transform future demand for more weapons, which creates additional wars here and here and here. And so, right, so we can transform the land into, right, so we have a dialectical material transformation of the global landscape into a cratered, bombed out war of all against all. And that's dialectic. So, they don't necessarily call it that, but you can, the Brzezinskis and the Kissingers understood that. You transform reality, and then you can transform reality to maintain capitalism, right? It's not, now the majority of people, if they all understood that they wouldn't necessarily want it. But I think, so I think there has to, there's like, that's another added component. Cause there can be some kind of like, one true way kind of thinking in certain circles of the left. And I just want to say that, like, I'm not saying there is any one thing that people have to do. I'm just like that the addressing the colonial aspect, on top of addressing the problems of capitalism, problems of colonial mindsets, which comes in all kind of different, like, in the religious dimensions, even just basic fashion dimensions, the way you do family, the way people do relationships, the way people do, child caring, are oriented towards children. The way people, just in the way people think about their life philosophically, like their life in this world, like you can just YOLO, you can just maximize self-interest and then just die, I just be like, I just don't really care, and people can even feel more selfish. People can be transformed by certain kinds of interaction with certain kinds of communities. If you interact with a fascist community, it's not going to help. If you interact with a weird, prosperity doctrine community, or so if you interact with a bunch of Wall Street stonk boys, that's not going to help you. But the values that are transmitted through different cultures, right, will impact. It's like that's Gramsci also speaking of spoke about this. Like, the transformations that happen inside of culture will impact whether or not you are successful in building and taking down the capitalist system and establishing something else as well. Anyway, I could just go off for a long more time, so I better stop. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching this. It's 2:30. I gotta go eat lunch. But yeah, socialist, anti-colonial, human-made games are important, I think, and keep on making them. Just to shout, there's a bunch of I'm just gonna throw this out there because this has been a cool place. The Socialist Reddit, because Reddit has lots of humans on it. I was actually a little bit worried about. I didn't like going on it at one point, but there's some parts of it that's not bad. I'm sure the Gen AI dystopian techno kings want to just ruin everything. Of course, trying to shove AI into everything. but there's still like at least a lot of humans I can find in it. So thanks. Shout out to the Reddit thread. The Socialist Gaming, our Socialist Gaming, who had lots of people check out Near Future 2 and comment about it and play it. And there's also lots of suggestions for Socialist Gaming channels and other kind of games and content channels. There was like I was trying to find okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it now. But long story short, there was like a whole bunch of gaming channels. I used a bunch of those to kind of like message, hey, you are like a socialist, you're like a leftist, Marxist something. You make YouTube video essays or video game let's plays or Twitch streaming. Would you like to check out Near Future 2? So that was a good like, because I didn't know about a lot of these. There's so many, channels and accounts out there on various platforms. Like some of these are just, some of the really, really big ones, but there's other ones too that like are of value and are worth checking out, but just hard to find them. So what I find is actually that more direct human to human interaction is, and human to human engagement to find other people is actually a better way than a lot of the algorithmic methods of discovering things. That's something I've been finding more and more. And I think there's going to be more of that as corporations and these huge, certainly the corporate and capitalist platforms continue to degrade and crap escape themselves as capitalism disintegrates. Okay, anyways, so thanks a lot for that. So I haven't looked at the chat that much. Oh, now my thing is going slow. Hey, thanks a lot, Overwatch, everybody, for stopping by. If you'd like to grab it, Neo Future 2 is on Steam. Neo Future 2 is a retro cyberpunk adventure game. It is on Steam. If you liked it, don't forget to leave even a very short review. It does help to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. It is a game that I spent 9 years working on. It is a retro cyberpunk adventure, and yeah, it's already in my library. Oh shit. Oh, sorry, I just dropped something. Yeah, so you can grab it on Steam. It's also a game that if you have a second to leave even a very short review, it's greatly appreciated. And you can also grab Neo Future 1, which is on sale right now. So consider picking that one up. Neo Future 1 is also 70% off right now. So it's a great time to get it if you haven't yet on the Steam sale. Of course, you can also pick up other games such as, and also if you have a second to leave a short review on that one, it's also greatly appreciated. Oh, actually, I want to like read one of them recently that somebody put up because it's relevant to what I'm talking about as well. Thanks a lot to I think it was just posted. Okay, so Rico Suave says the only proper working class game existing on this platform, Steam. Thanks a lot. And then Gaurav Gupta says winners don't do generic drugs. I'm still working through this, but so far it has been a fantastic upgrade to the first game. Thanks for playing Neo Future 1. The social commentary cuts deeper and on more fronts. The characters are much more sympathetic and likable, and the puzzles are far more intuitive. You're going to see some negative reviews struggling with the themes and messaging of the game, but Cyberpunk was always meant to skewer the contradictions of capitalism before those same systems turned it into something commercial by discarding everything but the aesthetic. So I really appreciate that because that's exactly what I wanted to try to do in Neo Future 2. So if somebody is like, which implies Neo Future 2 is trying to skewer the contradictions of capitalism, as opposed to just, having some neon cyberpunk flying cars and robot arms, then that I'm glad that that's just working out. So anyway, that has played out. So yeah, Neo Future 2 is on this page. Don't forget to pick it up. You can also get Neo Future and Neo Future 2 on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux, as well as Decolonizers. We kick capitalist colonizer butts out of your sovereign country of Vietnam. There's also Indigenous Star, which is a game about, it's set between Neophyte 1 and 2, and it deals with the indigenous people of the planet before the events of Neophyte 2 and the arrival of an empire that is a capitalist empire arrives to eradicate and plunder, and you have to resist them. There's also Pigeon with Gun, which is a kind of comedy game where you shoot lots of corporal cops and landlord gajillionaires as a pigeon with a gun. And there's also the Neophyte short story collection, Terminus Machina short story collection. And Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing Christian culture, critiquing that culture from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. And I just was talking to Proles Pod, so I want to shout them out. Thanks a lot to Proles Pod, Ray from Proles Pod. That's Workers Lit. I think that's also somebody. I'm trying to find the Proles Pod. Sorry. I might go on there at some point to talk about indigenous resistance and Marxism and other struggles in the Pacific. But yeah, shout out to Proles Pod. And also, of course, check out Half the Skype. I think I already said Half the Skype. Oh, not that. I already said Half the Skype podcast. So, but yeah, just in case you don't know about it, go check this out. It's coming out soon. A podcast for communist women by communist women plus, because women hold up half the sky. It's a quote. You should look it up. Also, get my computer slowed down. Yeah. So Half the Sky. What else is there? Yeah, and you can follow us at Silver Spook. Look for Silver Spook all over the place on Instagram, on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Look for Silver Spook. I can spell my name. There it is. Okay. You can look for Silver Spook on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon, et al. You can also look for Holly at Allergic for Blue on all these platforms also. And Holly, of course, is our moderator, our very important moderator. Does a lot of managerial care work, domestic work, also voice acts a whole bunch in all the games, and then does lots of other work around the Silver Spook, educational work around the Silver Spook household and elsewhere. And yeah, follow Holly as well. Thanks again to all of our Patreon patrons. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this work. So thank you so much to all of our ongoing Patreon patrons. Massively appreciate all that you've done. I didn't really give a lot of Neophyte 2 updates. I'm trying to do something a little different because I did so much Neophyte 2 talk about it. Let's do a little more Silver Spook political discussions. But Neophyte 2 is doing very well. It's sold better than the first game by like multiples. So that's really good. And yeah, I'm just, still promoting it and going to keep. I got lots of projects going on. I'm working on a socialist cartoon with American Johnson. I did some voice acting in that. There's lots of other things that are currently on the possible future Silver Spook front burners, mid and back burners. So yeah, look out for that. Okay, thanks everybody for watching. Until next time, keep your marriage stays polished, be excellent to each other, and have a good rest of your day.